Good afternoon. This is Bill, the unfettered preacher, Cody, and I want to talk to you today about the Trinity in the Old Testament. I am absolutely convinced that Jesus is alive and well in the Old Testament, and that there are plenty of scriptures to tell us that. And as I've mentioned many times before, if you've watched me at all, this realization came to me when I was reading Exodus, when I was going to sleep and remembering Exodus 3. When Moses saw the burning bush that wasn't being consumed, he went over to investigate. And it says, the Lord saw him, and God said, take off your shoes. And from that, I saw two members of the Trinity, the Lord, the Father, Yahweh or Elohim, or Jehovah, who is the eternal one, the existent one, and Elohim, who is God, the creator and ruler of all. After much study, many years of study also, I have confirmed my thoughts. And if you look at the first five books of the Bible, Moses very clearly brought out the difference between God and the Lord. Now, I've gone over earlier in the Bible before. You can find this in the Trinity in the Old Testament if you look up my theunfetterredpreacher.com website and go to the menu and see Trinity in the Old Testament. And I've got a lot of it listed right down there. But today I want to talk about Genesis 9 and Genesis 11 and Genesis 12. In Genesis 9, we have Noah. He's made it through the flood. God caused a wind to blow and dried the land, and Noah got out and he made a sacrifice to Yahweh, or to the Father. Then God blessed him with the same blessing he gave Adam and Eve. And he told them about the rainbow, and he just blessed them, really, through all of chapter 9. And then in chapter 11, we find the story goes to Yahweh, or Jehovah, and he's walking upon the earth, and he's seeing what they do in Babel, and he sees they're making a great town, a great city, and they are building a tower up to the heavens. And he says, since they are one language and one people and in agreement, they can do anything. So Jehovah mixed up their language, and that stopped the building of Babel, the tower, and it split the people up into all sorts of places. So we see the difference of God and blessing, and Yahweh separating them out from amongst and changing their language. In the New Testament, when we have the new language of tongues come down, that's a language that we can't all communicate with each other with, but it's a language we can communicate to God with. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Then we get to Genesis 12. And Genesis 12 starts out with, the Lord had said to Abraham, get thee away from that country. And that had said to me means that he had to tell him more than once. That Abraham heard it a couple times before he finally decided to leave the country. He wasn't supposed to bring anybody with him. He's supposed to leave all his family behind, but he took Lot. And as we look through the life of Abraham, all his problems stemmed from taking Lot, who he was told not to take. So chapters 12 through 14, we have Abram dealing primarily with the Lord, with Jehovah, with Yahweh, with the Eternal One. And he made many altars, and the Lord promised him many promises. Again, the promises of the promised land and the huge family and descendants, a lot of descendants. But in chapter 14, we find Lot getting captured along with many others from Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abram put an army together and rescued Lot from his captors. And that was when he met Melchizedek, the priest of God of Salem. That is the first time he heard the name God, Elohim. It's the first time Elohim is mentioned in the life of Abraham. Later that night, he had a vision, a dream, and Elohim, God, told him that his descendants would go into captivity for 400 years. And then the Lord assured him, it says, Yahweh assured him that that Sarai would have a child born of Abram. And he was 99 at that point. And when he was 100, she bore him Isaac. Now, somewhere in there, the Lord came and told him he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of all the sin and degradation that were there. And Abram at the time, talked him down that if he could find 10, maybe even 5 righteous, I don't remember, started at 50, but down to 10 or 5 righteous, that God would stop it. So God, it says that the Lord sent his angels in. The angels grabbed a hold of Lot and his 2 daughters and his wife's hand and led them out of town. They didn't want to leave. He led them out of town, and that town was destroyed. Now, the Bible tells us it was destroyed by Yahweh, and it was destroyed by God. Now, that's a sticking point for some people. God wouldn't do that. God, if God is Jesus, he wouldn't do that. Well, he would. The 7 deadly sins